Hey guys, Bud here with another tutorial from PremiumBeat.com. One of the most exciting features on the Panasonic GH5 and GH5S is the ability to shoot raw, high-resolution time lapses in camera without the use of additional gear or software. In this post workflow, we'll be utilizing 3 separate applications to create our time lapse. Lightroom, which we'll use for media management, clip naming, and applying our color grade. After Effects, which we'll use to generate the time lapse from a tiff photo sequence, and to massage any jitters in our time lapse by using After Effects' Warp Stabilizer VFX. And lastly, Premiere, which we'll use for editing our MOV, making minor color adjustments, and for exporting our final. At this point, you've already captured a time-lapse photo sequence with your GH5 and are ready to ingest media for post. If you're looking for more information about shooting time lapses with your GH5, check out part 1 of this series. To begin, always make sure that you back up your time-lapse photo sequences in at least 2 locations to prevent potential media loss. After that, the first step is to organize your time-lapse folder. Create a folder on your hard drive that will house all of your project's time-lapse files and name it accordingly. Within this folder, create 2 subfolders and name them as such. Source. This is the folder that houses your original media as shot on the GH5. Take note, be sure to dump all of your time-lapse photo sequences in this folder. We'll organize and manage our media within Lightroom in just a bit. And name the other subfolder Created TIFFs. This folder houses the TIFF files that we'll output from Lightroom in just a bit. Next, create a project in Lightroom. In this tutorial, I'm using Adobe Lightroom Classic CC Release 8.0. Once you've opened Lightroom, create a new Lightroom catalog by navigating to File, New Catalog. Navigate to the location you'd like to save the catalog to, and name it using a descriptive name. My time lapse is of a snowy mountain, so I'll name mine Mountain Time Lapse and hit Create. Here's a quick tip. Save your Lightroom catalog in your time-lapse project folder next to the subfolders you created earlier. This will save you time in the future when hunting for photos from a particular project. Next, import and organize your GH5 photo sequences in Lightroom. With the catalog created, import your photo sequences into Lightroom by navigating to File, Import Photos and Video. Lightroom will open a dialog box for you to locate and import your desired photos. Navigate to your project folder and select your photo sequences from the Source subfolder. Hit Import. Once the thumbnail previews generate, begin organizing your photo sequences by location and shot. Create a subfolder within the source folder for each shot that you captured. For instance, if you shot several time lapses on your recent trip, let's say 3 time lapses, you should create 3 separate folders within your source folder, one for each shot. Be sure to name each of those shot folders using a logical description, such as subject _ field of view. This time lapse is of the Jungfrau Peak in the Lauterbrunnen Valley of Switzerland. And I know that I shot this with my Canon 24-105 lens, so I'll name this one Jungfrau 105mm. I'm also going to create a rejects folder and put this within my source folder. You can see here that this first image in my photo sequence is much darker than the others, so I'll go ahead and drop this one into my rejects folder. I also remember seeing a bird fly across the frame in one of my images, so let me find that one, and I'll drop that in the rejects folder as well. At this point, you have the option to begin creating a look for your time lapse. So I'll navigate to my Develop tab and start grading my image. With the Panasonic GH5's firmware update version 2.3, shooters with the Vlog-L activation code can now shoot photos with the Vlog photo style. Not only does this give shooters more flexibility in grading their images, but it also lets them postpone grading until they ingest a time-lapse MOV into their NLE, With the updated firmware, you can apply the same LUT that you're using in your project in Premiere to your time-lapse footage in post, giving you the flexibility to match looks seamlessly. For now though, I'm going to show you how I would grade this time-lapse within Lightroom. The general process for color grading a time-lapse photo sequence is simple. First, you color grade a single image from the time-lapse photo sequence, and then apply the attributes from that image across all the other photos in the sequence. First, I'm going to adjust my crop. I want to use this in a video that's going to be an aspect ratio of 16:9, so I'm going to go ahead and crop my 4:3 image to 16:9. And that looks good. I'm going to take my highlights all the way down, and I'm going to bring my shadows all the way up. This gives me all of that lovely detail in my highlights and shadows. Next, I'll set my black point by holding down the Alt key and dragging the slider to the negative values until the darkest part of my image begins to clip. I'm going to do the same for my whites by holding down the Alt key and dragging the slider to the positive values until just before my whites begin to clip. With your whites, it's important to make sure you don't lose detail in the highlights. Next, I'm going to boost my contrast. That looks good to me. I'm also going to warm up my white balance as well. Moving down my sliders, I'm going to go ahead and adjust the clarity setting. Clarity is a little more forgiving than the sharpness and detail setting, so you can add quite a lot of clarity here without your image looking too processed. I've become a big fan of vibrance as opposed to saturation. I rarely touch the saturation slider these days, so I'll go ahead and boost my vibrance just a tad. I'm not a fan of overly saturated images, so this looks good to me. I'm going to add a touch more contrast by using the tone curve, and I'll set my point curve to medium contrast, and that usually does the trick. Now I really want my sky to pop. To do this, I'll navigate to the HSL Color tab and select the color setting. And I'm going to start playing around with my aquas and blues. When isolating and boosting a particular color in your image, you'll just have to play around a bit to find something you like. This looks good to me. And I'll do the same to my blues. This is starting to look good. In addition to bringing out my blue sky, I really want to bring out the color of the rock of the mountain. To do this, I'm going to play with the split toning function. So I'm going to throw my highlights to a hue of around here, around 235, and I'm going to set my saturation to about right there. Notice how this brings out the blues and the purples in my highlights. Next, I'll adjust my shadows value to a hue of about 45. And I'm going to bring up my saturation until that rock really starts to pop. Nice, love this. Next, I'm going to move down to my sharpening, and I'm going to throw a little sharpening on, not too much. I'll bump up my radius as well. So at this point, I've got some noise in my image, so I'll pick a spot on my image where I know noise is present. You can usually see noise in things like clouds and sky, so I'll select this target icon and mouse over my blue sky. You can definitely see some noise here. So I'll go ahead and throw on some noise reduction, but not too much. If you really bump up the noise reduction, your image will start to have this sort of plasticky look, which doesn't look good. One of my favorite tools in Lightroom is the color noise reduction slider. I use this all the time to reduce the green and purple sensor noise that the GH5 produces. I usually max this out. See there, you can see a difference in the 1:1 preview. Next, I'll set up my lens corrections. I'll check the remove chromatic aberration box. I'll enable profile corrections, and I'll choose my lens profile here. I shot this on the Canon 24-105. And lastly, I'll throw just a bit of post-crop vignetting in, just so it pulls the eye towards the center of my image. Not too much at all here. So you can go as complex with your grade as you like in Lightroom. There are a ton of features and tools available for you here that you can play with to get your desired image. So once you've created a desired look, right-click the graded photo and select Develop Settings, Copy Settings. And a dialog box is going to open here asking you which attributes you'd like to copy. Select all of the attributes that you have adjusted and click Copy. Next, deselect that graded photo and select all of the photos within your photo sequence, excluding the image that you're copying attributes from. With these photos selected, right-click and select Develop Settings, Paste Settings, and we'll start to see our thumbnail images update here. So once we've finished our grade in Lightroom, it's time to export our photo sequence. When ready to export the photo sequences of a particular shot, select all of the photos within that shot subfolder, navigate to File, Export. Adobe Lightroom includes a powerful exporting feature that allows for batch exporting photos with set parameters for things like file destination, file naming, and quality compression settings. Under the Export Location tab, designate an export location within the created TIFF subfolder you created earlier. For each time-lapse you shot, create a matching subfolder in your created TIFFs folder by checking the box Put in Subfolder and naming it accordingly. If you're working with multiple time-lapse shots, do this for each shot. Ensure that the created TIFF subfolder structure matches the structure of the source subfolder. This is especially important for large projects that include a lot of time-lapses. Under the File Naming tab, check the box Rename to and select Edit from the drop-down menu. Now in this dialog box, input the following naming structure. You can really put any naming structure that you would like, but this is the one that I use. Sequence number, and I'm going to make sure that I have at least 4 digits in my sequence number because sometimes I have photo sequences that can go up into the thousands of images. I'm going to designate original file name and version number. This is the first export from Lightroom for this particular photo sequence, so I'll leave this as set to V1 or version 1. And lastly, under the File Settings tab, select TIFF from the Image Format drop-down menu. Under the Compression drop-down menu, select None and specify the sRGB color space. Now, if you're looking to preserve hard drive space, you can also export JPEGs and set the quality to 100. I like using TIFFs or DNGs if I'm shooting RAW to preserve the highest quality images possible. Select Export. And I'm going to speed up the tutorial here. Once the export is complete, open After Effects and import the sequence by navigating to File, Import, File. Navigate to the Shot subfolder within your created TIFFs folder and select the first photo of that sequence. With the first photo selected, check TIFF Sequence and check Force Alphabetical Order. Click Open. With the image sequence in your After Effects project panel, right-click the sequence and navigate to Interpret Footage, Main. In this dialog box, select the Assume This Frame Rate and select your desired frame rate. Now, 24 frames a second is appropriate for most projects. For a faster speed, select 48 frames per second. I'll set this one to 23.976. It's what I use most often. And I'll select OK. With the TIFF sequence in your project panel, create a new composition by navigating to Composition, New Composition. Name your composition to match the shot name and set your desired parameters for resolution and frame rate. The UHD 4K 23976 preset in After Effects works for most of my projects. I'll set my desired composition duration and select OK. With the composition open, drag the TIFF sequence to your After Effects timeline and resize and adjust your shot based on your new resolution. You can remove any jitter from your time-lapse sequence by applying the Warp Stabilizer VFX to your composition. At this point, it's time to export your MOV from After Effects. But first, go ahead and save your After Effects file so you can go back and make changes should you need to re-export your MOV in the future. Create an After Effects subfolder within your time-lapse project folder and hit Save. Next, let's navigate to Composition, Add to Render Queue, and set your output settings to QuickTime Format, and click the Format Options button here. Since we'll be importing this time-lapse into Premiere for use in a larger project, you'll want to use either a ProRes codec or an uncompressed codec. I've got plenty of hard drive space, so I'm going to use the uncompressed 10-bit 422 codec. I'll specify a destination within my time-lapse project, and for this I'm going to create another subfolder within my After Effects folder, and I'm going to call it AE Exports, and I'll hit Export. Once again, I'm going to speed up the tutorial here. Once the MOV is finished exporting, it's time to import it into our Premiere project. I'm going to create a new Premiere project, and I'm also going to save this within my time-lapse project folder. So I'll create a new subfolder and call it Premiere, and I'll hit Save. So I'm working with an uncompressed UHD MOV file on a 2015 MacBook Pro, so I'll definitely need to create some ingest settings for my Premiere project. So I'll navigate to my Ingest Settings tab, check the Ingest button, and from the drop-down menu, I'm going to select Create Proxies. For now, I'll just use the 1280-720 GoPro Cineform preset, and I'll hit OK. And Media Encoder should open automatically and begin creating my proxy. And there it is. My time-lapse is in my Premiere project, and it's ready for use in my documentary, short film, commercial project, etc. I can make final adjustments to color and edit it just as I would any other clip. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time on PremiumBeat.com.